KEOS.org. You click on the Listen Now icon. You can stay in tune with your favorite radio station 24/7 and not miss any of the great shows and programming that we offer here on KEOS, like a family affair tonight. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I have a great, important show lined up for you tonight. I have two Vietnam veterans in the studio with me tonight, and distinguished citizens of the Brazos Valley with me tonight, long-term residents, both of them. We'll kick it off. Mike Southerland's here and Larry Johnson. Larry, let's kick it off with you. Tell the listeners a little bit about your background. Where'd you grow up, and how'd you get connected to the Brazos Valley?
My dad, my family moved here in 1958. My dad's mother and brother lived here. And he started teaching junior college at Allen Military Academy. We were basically since 1958. I'd gone a few years in the Marine Corps. But then my father died when I was 15. We moved for about a year up near Austin. My mother's folks farmed the ranch, and I moved back when I got out of the Marine Corps. Something told me to volunteer. I'm going to go fight for my country to help stop the threat of communism. That's the main reason the miracle was over there, to help slow the threat of communism in that country. The people didn't want to live under communism. But I joined the Marines and was in the 1st Marine Division, 3rd Battalion Southern Marines in Vietnam, infantry, tunnel rat, team leader, point man. I tried to do stuff that nobody else wanted to do for some reason. I don't know why I did that, but I did.
Well, now, what year was this when you went to Vietnam?
I was there in most of '69 and a couple of months of '70.
Okay, so 69.
March '69 till like March of '70.
And for people who may not know, who knows who's listening tonight, it's sad to say, but some of the young folks or even some older folks don't know their history much anymore, it seems like. But the Vietnam, they didn't even call it a war, they called it the Vietnam conflict, which always kind of struck me as odd. I mean, you guys were in a war, you weren't in a conflict, were you?
We were. I don't know about the rest of them, we were.
But anyway.
They wasn't shooting blank bullets at us, that's for sure.
No, it wasn't it was a horrible thing, and it went on for a long time, like from the early, actually, I think Eisenhower started sending advisors over like in the late 50s or
middle 50s, actually.
Yeah, and France was over there after World War II, and anyway, so it dragged on to like, was it 74 or 75? When
75. And they finally got him when he quit totally.
Yeah, when he quit totally, and so it was a long ordeal, listeners, and it was a lot of our men gave their ultimate sacrifice, and families did. How many people died in the Vietnam conflict? Do you all know?
58,000 something.
58,000 gave their lives over there, and it was all in the idea anyway was to stop the spread of communism, which was obviously a huge concern back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. I guess the idea was the old domino threat: if one country failed, another one would fall, another one. Before you know it, we'd all be communists. So anyway. Now, Larry, before you went over there, had you ever heard of Vietnam? Did you know where it was at? Did you know much about it?
Yeah, my cousin joined the Marine Corps 2 years before I did. My neighbor across the patch, I used to play. We all played together. They were a few years older than me. He joined the Marine Corps, then his air wing went to Vietnam. And so, I'd heard from my grandmother and my uncle about my cousin being in the Marine Corps. His air wing never did go. Then my buddy, neighbor across the street, across the field, his mom and dad still lived out there, and I talked to them, and they said, John, he's over in Vietnam, and so on, so on, so on, so. And so I decided to just go join and be an infantryman. That's what I wanted to be.
So you didn't get drafted, you actually joined?
No, I joined, yes, sir.
Now, were you kind of scared when you're going over there, or you just like, this is what I need to do because I got relatives that's done it?
We flew in on Continental Airlines at night because they've been mortaring and rocking the airport. We slept out on some wooden benches at the airport till daylight. And then I went to my first assignment, was riding shotgun on a mess hall truck at 1st Med Battalion. I'm going they sent 8 of us infantrymen over there. I guess they wanted infantry there in case something did happen at the 1st Med Battalion.
So you're ready to handle it?
I was there 1 month while I went to the jungle.
Now, so tell us about the sign-up process. Did you go to was there a recruiting station in town at the time? Or
yeah, I had moved up to Houston with an aunt and uncle. And I was working for one of my uncles. I had 4 uncles living in Houston. And I was working for one of them, and some reason I just decided, hey, I'm going to the Marine Corps. They had me working for them, and I didn't mind the job too bad. But I decided my cousin was in, my buddy was in. They were like, say, 3 or 4 years older than me, but I decided I just want to go. It was ready for me, time for me to go, I think.
Now, so the Marines was because of relatives, or I mean, because of the Army. Marines is the toughest I've always heard. It's like really, I mean, as far as Mike may disagree with it,
Yeah.
but I
They
mean,
make all that up. That's not true.
My dad was Army, but my cousin went in the Marine Corps, and he wasn't much bigger than me. And my neighbor across the street, he wasn't much bigger than me. I said, if they can do it, I can do it. Everybody said, well, I don't know, Larry, you better. And my cousin's husband, I was helping build a roping pen. He said, I don't know, Larry, I wasn't doing no Marine Corps. I was in there, man. I said, no, I never made up my mind. I'm going to go,
yeah.
you know.
Was boot camp? Where'd you go to boot camp at?
San Diego, and I'm going to tell you what, that was a tough song.
Did you have second thoughts there for a little bit?
I said, man, what I got myself into it first. I heard it was rough, so I was getting in shape. I was building roping pen, digging post holes,
Yeah.
hauling cross ties on weekends with my cousin's husband, and so I was trying to get in shape, but it's a good thing I did, because some of them had a hard time.
Yeah. What do you know? When we get to Mike in a sec, I'm just curious. What were your thoughts since you joined? Want to go fight for your country? You know, back then, I didn't experience it all, but I know reading about and hearing about it. A lot of people burned their draft cards, refused to go. How did that sit with you, with both y'all, really?
It's pretty aggravating, you know. I mean, like, man, he's gonna burn it, make him eat it,
Yeah.
you know, or something. I mean, what the heck? He likes living in a free country, you know, the greatest country in the world, and he don't want to do nothing about it, even though, you know, it just may have seemed like a faraway war, but you got to try to stop communism when you can. Well, I looked at it.
Yeah. So you did your duty. In fact, you didn't get drafted. You didn't wait for the draft. You just went and got in there.
I made up my mind. I guess us Johnsons are pretty hard-headed. Well, nobody gonna change it. My grandpa, I actually had lost an uncle in the Marine Corps, and my grandpa didn't say anything to me about it. Though. He said, "Do what you want to." So that's what he told me.
Do what you want to, and you went and did it. And you were only, how old were you when you joined?
I was 18 when I joined.
So wow, right out of high school. You know, I think we forget sometimes, you know, we can forget if we're not careful, how young most of the soldiers are.
Yeah.
You know, they're not 50s and 60s and 40s and 70s unless they're a general or something like that. I mean, they're 18, 19, 17, 20 years old. Anyway, that's Larry Johnson here, folks, from Bryan, Texas, in any way. Mike Southerland, next to him. Mike, about your background. Did you grow up here? I think you grew up a little bit everywhere, didn't you?
Let me thank you first for helping us with helping the veterans, what you're doing for us.
Yes,
It
sir.
really, what you provide to us really makes a difference. It's hard to tell, you know, because this is all mental that we're talking about. And
Right.
You bring up some things that help us think a little differently about what we're doing. Yeah, I grew up in Louisiana, and I got out of high school, went to a couple of years at LSU and was working in the oil field. After that, offshore, we were working 7 out and 2 in, and it was hot, and it was terrible. And so I forgot to register for the draft because I had an exemption, and so I got drafted. They were drafting 30,000 people a month in '66.
30,000 Americans a month were being drafted. Not in addition to the ones like Larry who were joining on their own.
Besides the volunteers.
Yeah, that's
I don't think there was that many volunteers as right now, but in any case, so I got drafted, and man, that oil field was rough. So I said, thank God it can't be this bad. and so, but I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. We weren't exposed to really what was going on down where I was. Everybody, you know, supported the military and they were patriotic and all that stuff. So it wasn't really a controversy. And I knew my dad served in World War II, so with all his brothers. So I really couldn't say I'm going to Canada. And as a matter of fact, when we got sworn in after we got drafted, we went down to the station, to the swearing-in station, what do you call it? And they said, boys, you got a choice here now. Actually, you got 3 choices. You can go in the Army, you can go to jail for 5 years, or you can go to Canada. So you make a choice. So I stayed in, and I got drafted and stayed in and went to flight school and flew helicopters in Vietnam. And so after the shooting stops, it's a whole different deal, you know.
Right.
It's just a matter of leadership, management, and working and training. So I enjoyed it, so I stayed in 22 years.
Wow, you made basically a career out of it.
Started as a private,
Yeah.
and I retired as lieutenant colonel.
And we call them lifers.
Lifers.
Yeah. It was a life, all right. But I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I learned it. I knew the system, and I could help people around the system. You got to know the rules before you play the game.
Exactly.
And so I was in Vietnam about the same time he was. I got there in February '69 and left in February '70.
So most people did a 1-year tour unless they re-enlisted.
Well, depends on when you started. If you started earlier than that, some of the helicopter pilots did 2 tours.
Okay.
And you could volunteer for a second tour if you wanted to, but generally speaking, from our time on, it was just 1 tour. Because they were shutting things down.
Now, had you flown before you went to Vietnam? I mean, is that something new that you...
I hadn't even flown in an airliner, man.
You just signed up to be and they took
Well,
you
the
pilot?
reason is because after I got in, I thought, well, hell, I don't need to be in Vietnam. So they said, who wants to go to OCS? I raised my hand. I said, how long was that school? They said 6 months. I said, I'll take it. So, I qualified for it. I said, and then when we got to OCS, they said, who wants to take the test for flight school? I said, how long was that school? They said about 8, 9 months. I said, I'll do that deal too. And so I went to flight school, got out of flight school, that was the end of the road. And they still, at the time that they were, during that time they were saying almost every day, well, it's going to be over soon. We're going to have a negotiated peace and it's going to be done. But it didn't, it lasted from, yes, when they started talking about,
to 75.
yeah, till, yeah, 70. So anyway, so we didn't make it, so.
Well, that was all, Nixon's deal when he got elected in, I guess, 69 was to bring an honorable peace, I guess, up to train the South Vietnam to fight on their own, which didn't work too well, I guess.
It didn't work. That doesn't work for some reason. Those other people were so overpowering, they just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I was going to ask Larry, because you're down there with the infantry, did I guess, we'll get to that in a minute. I was going to ask you how the South Vietnam fought alongside you, but I guess they did they, or did they not?
I wasn't around that much. We went to a lot of places where they got overrun. For some reason, they got overrun pretty easily. Usually, I don't know what the deal was with that, but I never was around any much. One thing I wanted to mention too, that my dad was in the Army. He stayed there for quite a while. He made up to officer or lieutenant or something. But I never did get to ask him what all he did in the war. I know the only thing he told me one time was, I was in England, we were sleeping in tents, and I woke up and my socks were frozen to my feet. Okay. Well, then Dad died, and then my cousins, my mama's first cousin's husband, he was in the Army, and they were best friends, and he was, horses and 2 or 3 head of cows, a couple of milk cows, and then Don Rice actually fought in Korea, and we just lost him a few months ago. He was 90 and a half.
Oh, wow.
And he became my big brother after Dad died, and I'd work cows with him, do whatever, and with him. And when I told him, I was going to join the Marine Corps, he just said, just do what you think you got to do.
Right.
We just lost him a few months ago. He was 90 and a half.
Man, awesome.
He worked cows till he was like 85.
That's what you call a tough guy right there. They don't make him like that much anymore.
He was my hero next to Roy. He was one of my heroes next to Roy Rogers.
Roy Rogers, there you go.
Hero,
Yeah, cowboy hero, Roy Rogers.
But he did it. I don't remember how many years he did, but he did the tour in Korea.
Yeah.
He wouldn't talk about it much, but he finally started telling me a little bit about it when he was in his mid-80s.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't talk about the war, back in the.
It took me 40-something years.
Why is that? I mean, Mike, what do you think?
Well, I've made a couple of speeches about this. The battlefield has a very long arm, and it doesn't necessarily get you right after you leave. Some people it doesn't get till they're my age. I have friends that are my age and didn't have any problems like me until after they retired from their second job, probably 60s, 70s. And then when you have time to think about it, you're not busy, it gets you.
The memories come back.
Right, and so I think as long as you can stay busy, and as long as you don't have to dwell on it, like I was on active duty for 20 years and we didn't really talk about it very much. Somebody might ask you what unit you're in, but they wouldn't ask you, what kind of conflicts, what kind of firefights or whatever you're in. So
Didn't get into those kind of details.
Right.
Just a natural thing just not to talk about it. Or you didn't want to talk about the horrors or the really bad things you saw either.
Well, it's much easier to not talk about it because it's like somebody's shooting at you and you don't want to go into where they're shooting at you. You want to stay away from it. And it's pretty, sometimes it's pretty painful. So the more you stay away from it, but sooner or later, it's going to be there for you.
Well, I like what you said. The war has a long arm.
Right.
That's a really good statement because,
especially I think with Vietnam veterans, because we didn't get offer any help to speak of when we came home.
Talk about coming home. What was that process? So you spent a year over there, Larry. We'll get to what you did in a minute, but that's a good point. When you guys came back, it was usually just by yourself. Here's a plane ticket, and go live your life, right?
Yeah, you didn't tell anybody. about Vietnam. Everybody was calling names, different names about you. I didn't kill no babies. You would call you that.
They call you
yeah.
baby killers and
Yeah.
stuff when you came back to the
Yeah,
States.
and a buddy of mine walked my back up when I walked point. I tried to get him. I said, "Where you been?" He said, "I went back in." He said, "I got tired of being called names there, so I went back in for a few more months." I said, "Man, that's crazy, because we wouldn't say, 'Hey, come here, Johnson. We're going to give you some counseling before you get out in the real world.'" But they try to do that to most Iraqi and Afghan veterans. Of course, not all of them accept it.
Right.
But like the new guys coming to group, I say, whatever you do, keep coming to group. Don't
Right.
mess your family up,
Yeah.
like some of us have.
Right. Yeah, so when you guys got out, there was none of this, hey, let's do some debriefing, let's do some processing, let's talk about what you've witnessed and what you've seen
Go
and kind of
home.
prepare you.
Go
Simply
home.
go home, go back to life. And,
Get home.
As a matter of fact, in some areas, depending on where you're going, like we came into California, and when we got to California, they would tell us to take off our uniforms and put on civilian clothes before we got on another flight to leave.
just
Because people would harass us.
Yeah.
so people were that anti-hostile, so that hostile towards the soldiers.
And the bad thing about that, it was just a small percentage of the overall population that were doing that.
Yeah.
But if that small percentage
Got all the news.
would
and all
be, cause the problem.
Well, later on, I got back in '70, and then I had a job with the Corps in '72 or '3. I can't remember. I was in school. They took me out of school. There was a big flood in Pennsylvania and Maryland. And I went to the Corps of Engineer headquarters. We were walking out. This was, well, I guess the war wasn't over yet. It was about a couple of years before it was over. But anyway, we were walking down this sidewalk in the city, and this guy walked up to us and spit on the sidewalk and called us baby killers.
Wow. I guess I never understood that. Again, I wasn't, I was alive back then. I don't remember hearing about it, but I'm wondering, why do you think people would take out their anger on political stuff about the war on you guys? You guys didn't start it. You guys were just doing your duty that most of them were too cowardly to do or didn't want to do. I mean, what is this? Why do they hate the soldiers so bad? Do you have
I
any
think
idea?
because we were at hand, They didn't like it. They're going to take it out on somebody, so they took it out on us.
They couldn't go to Washington and grab them or call them names, so they had to do it to whoever they saw.
And so I think that baby killer thing came from, there was a couple of pictures of a baby that had been shot. And I don't know if it was our guys or the bad guys, but when I first got there, one of my first missions was to go pick up some civilians, some Vietnamese that had been shot up by the Viet Cong. And we got, I think I told this last time, we got this baby, picked up this baby and it was alive. When we got on the helicopter, we took it straight to the hospital, and it had been shot by a Viet Cong, but it was dead by the time we got to the hospital. It was such a sad thing,
Yeah.
And you ask why the Viet Cong would shoot them, because they do that to put the scare factor into the people in the villages that might be friendly to the Americans.
So they're saying, don't you
yeah.
talk to the Americans?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the poor people in Vietnam, the villagers out, because it was like in America 150 years ago, they had grass huts and mud huts and wooden plows, plowing with water buffalo,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they either were in a rock and a hard place. If they helped us, the Viet Cong would kill them. If it didn't help us, we'd be mad at them. So that was the worst threat was the Viet Cong.
So this General Joe Blow citizen over there, South Vietnam citizen, was terrified of both sides.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And more of their own people.
And the French had been there before, so they treated them the same way as some of the Viet Cong did. And plus, they had our equipment with the big white star on it, so they blamed us for what the French did. So it's a terrible thing. It was all.
It was if you were in the big villages close to the big cities, they would put Marines in there and soldiers to guard them. But out in the boonies, like where I was in the small villages, they were just freaking on their own. They were just bad shape.
You hear about the baby killers and stuff y'all mentioned, that people were saying all the protests back in those days, which was horrible. But talk about the soldier. You guys worked with a lot of very honorable men, right? These weren't baby killers. These weren't crazies over there doing horrible things. Because the image sometimes you get is people over there smoking pot and shooting heroin and killing civilians. That wasn't the case at all, was it?
No, not for me.
No, me neither.
The guys that I worked with were around, I was 20, I was the old guy. The rest of them were 18 and 19, and they were helicopter pilots at 19 years old. And they were very, very good. I mean, they could fly helicopters, no doubt about it. So they loved to fly. They didn't want to do anything else but fly. And they didn't attack anybody unless they were attacked. At one point, if we got shot at, we could return fire no matter where it was coming from. But later on, about 2-3 months after into the tour, there were some restrictions that you couldn't fire back unless you identified who was firing. So that saved some lives there. so you didn't just willy-nilly shoot. But we got shot at all the time.
Well, that would be kind of scary too. I think if you're being shot, I'm thinking I don't need to identify who it is. I'm thinking, there's somebody trying to kill me. I need to shoot back. That restricted you guys, put your lives in jeopardy. What about you, Larry? You were in the infantry compared to helicopter corps.
Well, yeah, we had good guys. Most of them were good guys, good Marines. We had one guy that was a draftee, and his last name was Sutton. We called him Spastic Sutton because they always said, "Well, I'm not going to shoot nobody unless they shoot at me." And I said, "Well, what if that bullet hits you first?" So we kept him in charge of the squad. He always kept in the back of the squad.
Right.
Because we didn't
couldn't trust him up front, could you?
Yeah, and then we was at a place called OK Corral. This little short story, and it was about the size of this building, maybe. It had a dirt wall, concertina wire, one bunker and one hut. The last Marines there got on, so we're there doing ambushes at night. We were getting ready to go on an ambush one night. One of them pitch nights where you couldn't hardly see your pen in front of your face, and we didn't have no flashlights either. Everybody went in the tunnel. And Sutton was messing with it. We had a good squad leader named Dave Puya from Louisiana. Sutton was messing with his rifle and shot Dave in the leg with a tracer round.
Oh, Lordy.
Right? So then about 3 months later, I was on R&R, or 4 months later, and they were coming down a mountain. Of course, another squad was behind our squad. Sutton was telling Charlie that somebody's rifle got hung on a tree limb and shot him twice in the shoulder.
Yeah.
We didn't kill him, but we were glad to see him leave.
Yeah. It sounds like he
we were glad to see him leave.
Spastic guy didn't need to be there, did he?
Yeah, he just, he didn't need to be there. We had one cigarette meal in the morning, one in the evening. He was a pretty big guy, pretty big bone guy. He would eat both his at the same time.
Yeah.
Then go around trying to bump from everybody. We're going like, what do we got to bump from? We got 2 cans of food, morning and evening. You know what I mean? There's nothing left to bump.
He was hungry, wasn't he?
And so we were glad. We didn't want to see him shot. We were glad to see him leave.
Yeah. But most of the guys were really honorable men who wanted to do their job, did the best they could.
And lived through it.
And lived through it, yeah. To live through it. The whole thing was to get back home to your family.
98% of the ones I knew were that way.
Yeah.
98%.
Yeah. And that's the message that needs to get out there to everybody, that you weren't baby killers, you weren't unethical, you weren't illegal, you were soldiers fighting for freedom, because our country decided that we needed to fight for freedom over there, and you went, your bravery, and you did it honorably and did it well, and you deserve so much more than what you got back in the 70s.
What I like to say is, at least we kept the Vietnamese people halfway free for 10 years.
Yeah.
Before they went back to communism.
What's that make you think, Mike, when you realize that, when we did leave, it just collapsed? I mean, did you feel like you fought for nothing almost?
No, I didn't think about it. I didn't, that's too much. That's too much to bear. That day, we didn't have anything to do with the decision to do that.
Yeah.
And we went, like I was told to go. I didn't have a choice, so like Larry took a choice, but I didn't, I could have a choice, but I didn't.
Right.
But that decision is too much to think about, Did it work, didn't it work? And you drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Dwelling on that. We did it, we did what we were supposed to, and some of it worked, some of it didn't, and we came home, so thank God.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, I had a good friend tell me when I come home, "Oh, I'm glad to see you home. I don't want to see our boys over there dying for nothing." I said, "Hey, don't ever tell me that ever again. My buddies didn't die for nothing.
Right.
My buddies didn't die for nothing. Don't ever say that to me again."
That was the perception these guys had back home.
Well, it's gotten worse though over the years about how we went over there for nothing. So that's why I'm willing.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Afghanistan, with the example they threw up, where those guys got pulled out.
Well, it's just a travesty that politicians, the way that it's done, but obviously you guys fought to keep people free and to protect those people and stop communism from growing, which, by the way, was a huge threat. Communism is an atheistic, horrible form of government that kills and enslaves people.
I think moreover, though, the United States was founded on that kind of thing, that the government tells the people that we got to defend ourselves or attack this thing, and generally speaking, it's worked pretty good. So look where we are now. But they all don't work good. The decisions aren't all good, and so some of us suffer for it, and some of us, are heroes for it. So it's just, if you want to live here, that's the price you pay.
What's the price? Freedom isn't free, is it?
I was going to add that this may be a horrible example, but for me, my experience there was like MASH. You know,
The TV show MASH?
Yeah, like MASH, this TV show MASH, because they were all having fun and joking and all that stuff, and that's what we did. But when the shooting started, buddy, it was all serious. None of that happened. But we also played tricks on people, and we amused ourselves because there wasn't much else to do after we weren't flying.
Right.
We flew quite a bit, but it was a whole lot like that, because I think that's the way we maintain our sanity. Because we flew in so much stuff, and he was facing so much stuff. It just, I mean, you get shot up and just out of the blue, you know, man, you'd be flying along and you thought you'd safe and you're watching what's going on, and then, you know, somebody's on you.
Wow.
So my wife used to ask me to go camping a lot. This is when I was still a workaholic, keep my mouth for one. I said, "You kidding? I just can't sleep on the dirt for the last 9 months." You know, don't ask me to go camping again. I mean, like, she'd get upset because I wouldn't go camping with the boys. I think I went one time when the boys were growing up, you know.
Wow.
And I just said, okay, I'm not into camping right now.
Well, you know, listeners, it's such a fascinating story. Again, Mike Southerland and Larry Johnson, 2 Vietnam veterans, 2 heroes of America, this great country here, and deserves so much of our honor and respect. And thank you guys for your service. I can never thank you enough. Nobody can thank you enough. You should have got the thanks back when you came back. But you know, I just thank you for sharing your story. Mike mentioned the war has a long arm to it. And Larry, you have some statistics you brought with you on some mental health issues with veterans. Talk about those, and let's see what you have for us.
Well, 2017 research done by the VA found that 4.8 million vets have suffered with some type of suicidal thoughts.
4.8 million
Yeah.
current veterans suffer with some sort of mental illness
That's
issue.
with substance abuse and twice as likely to commit suicide. Now, 58% of veterans right now over 55 years old are committing suicide. 58%. That's 20 a day.
It gets you in the long run, in the long run.
That's 20 a day, 55 and older. So that means most of those are Vietnam veterans and some Iraq veterans.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, a lot of Vietnam veterans and maybe, yeah.
And that's pathetic. You know, it's pathetic. We're losing 20 of our veterans a day. What? I mean, to me, I don't like the Veterans Administration. To me, has been mostly good, but they're lacking that help for that somewhere down the line. They're not getting it.
It's just not enough.
You know, and it's a shame. You know, and it just, most of it can be because of psychological stress from the war, even the low cholesterol, it says, lack of sleep, PTSD, which is supposed to make stress, and TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And, you know, and binge drinking. All that's contributed to suicide, and also, you know, financial problems and all that kind of stuff. Marriage problems. I lost a buddy 3 years ago. It was the war and marriage problems.
Yeah.
He didn't drink, hardly any. I mean, beer every once in a while on weekends. I mean, he was a coffee drinker.
Yeah. Well,
It all mattered up. He was retired. That's when you think about it. When you can't stay busy every day, that's when it starts getting us older guys.
start thinking
You know,
about
and
this.
it's a shame. And because this is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. So I think about it every day, even though my buddy 3 years ago, to me it was like last week some days.
It's so tragic. You know, one of you guys said, Larry, it might have been you or Mike, I can't remember which one told me one time, it said that you were talking about somebody, maybe you were talking about the same individual that took his life.
Yeah.
And you said that he chose to end the war that day.
That's right. That's how some veterans end the war.
Isn't that, listeners, I mean, isn't that sad in telling what you guys went through?
It's shameful.
50 years, 40 years later, you're still fighting the war in your mind.
Yeah.
And nobody's there to help you guys like they should, or well, not to the degree that you need help.
And I think it's worse than that, Dr. Vance, because the people I've seen that commit suicide have family that don't try to understand their position.
Exactly.
They just put them aside. And so these guys are very, very vulnerable. And then, I hate to say it, it's worse than being mean to them. They persecute them sometimes with things they say to them. And that really overcomes them. I think that puts an end to them. I've known civilians that were in World War II that were in Germany and those kind of things, same thing, they did the same thing. And people are, people we know here locally.
What would you give advice to a family member, say a wife of a veteran? I mean, what can they do that's helpful, and what should they be aware of maybe that that they're not aware of that they're doing wrong? I mean, what is there
Well,
something?
I think they need to go to counseling with the veteran. You know, because like my wife, we've had a problem, and she says, "Oh, I do this crazy stuff and get in trouble." And she said, "Well, I said, I guess that's just an excuse." I said, "Well, whether it's an excuse or not, I want to know, was it the war? You know, what else made me do all that stuff? I don't have a history of that. My family doesn't have a history of doing the crazy stuff I did."
Right.
So to me, the family's got to get more involved and understand that veteran. He's retired now. He's not working every day 10 like me. I work 16 hours a day most of my life. They got to understand. Don't mess with him about stuff that they shouldn't mess with him. Try to understand the problems of war. We're losing 20 a day. I mean, so the government's not helping enough, or the families are not trying to. From all I said, well, that's just an excuse. I'm trying to get them to understand. I don't know if that's an excuse or not, but I'm trying to figure out why it happened.
Yeah, and I love what you said is they need to get involved and go together to counseling, because really when you're a married couple, you are a team, right?
Right.
And something affects one, it affects both. The whole system is affected. So that idea of systems, you know, counseling,
because the
whatever.
average wife just gets mad at you and starts yelling at you, you know, about this or that, or won't talk to you or whatever. The average one.
Yeah, and they don't understand the anger outbursts or the startle reflex that you have, the long arm of the war.
Like we were talking about, like we're very sensitive. We've been trained to be sensitive.
Yeah, and then you have these memories that, again, when you're busy, you know, but all of a sudden you get to sit around and think, okay, well, I remember my buddy who died. I remember that very scary, terrifying situation I was in. And
a friend of mine just recently told me he was in the Navy, and his brother was in the Marine Corps and got killed his first day in Vietnam in booby trapping. He just recently told me I had 4 boys, and we wasn't really close to none of them, but maybe one. And he originally told me, he said, "Larry, did you ever think about why you're not close to your boys?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I know why." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because you were close to them buddies in Vietnam and you lost them. So you were scared to be that close to your boys because you scared them about losing one." I said, "You know, you probably got a freaking, that's probably could be it, because that's just the way I was. I didn't want to be close to them."
what people don't understand, and correct me, Larry or Mike, if I'm wrong here, but what my understanding is when you're fighting side by side with somebody, it's more than just a co-worker. This is a brother. This is somebody closer than a family member, right?
I mean,
They got your back. That's the deal.
Sleeping with them at night in the rain, pouring down rain, you know, going hungry or thirsty if you didn't have no food. I mean, I went 2 times without food or water. I mean, you're right there with him, especially that 3 or 4, whatever was in my team, you were really close to, you know what I mean? And it just is like, when something happened to him, it's like losing your brother.
Yeah. So when you saw your comrades or you know people die that you worked with, that you lived and fought with,
We were out 30 to 45 days at a time.
you know, living, fighting, keeping others back. That's a huge traumatic event. It's not just a quote co-worker, which is bad enough. This is your brother.
Yeah.
It was so bad for me. One of my platoon guy, one of my mechanics helped know he's a crew chief, got killed, and I couldn't remember his name for 30 years. And I flew with him 12 hours a day, many days. But that's the easy way out. You don't deal with it. Just leave it and let it go.
Yeah, but like you said, the long arm never goes away, does it?
You're right. And so I contacted that guy's family later on in life. And another thing about the long arm is that it's mental, but it's also medical. I got cancer about 3 years ago. Cancer showed up from Agent Orange about 3 years ago, and I left in 1970.
So for listeners who don't know, Agent Orange was a chemical that the Army sprayed, or
they killed grass with it. Yeah, it was a defoliant.
So they could see the enemy easier.
Right. But they used it. I found out. I couldn't figure out why. I flew all the time. I was on the ground very few times, except I wasn't exposed to it much, except one flight I was in. But anyway, so I met with some of my buddies from the platoon that I was in Dallas, and they were talking about Agent Orange, and they were joking about how they got concentrated Agent Orange and sprayed it or poured it all around where we slept, all around our hooch. It was so strong they had to come back with water and reduce it. And I said, "You know what, boys, y'all are killing me. I don't know why y'all don't have cancer. I don't know why I'm the only one that's got cancer. I guess they poured it underneath my bunk." You know, so,
Did you have to, they poured a bunch under your bunk?
they must have. I didn't ask if I felt like that. I said, "Lord," because several of us were in the same hooch. You know, the same deal. We lived in the same building.
I think it all depends on your immune system for some of that, maybe. I don't
Well,
know.
anyway.
Listeners, if you're just tuning in, this is KEOS 89.1 FM College Station in Bryan, a show we call A Family Affair. come to you live every Friday night from 6 to 7 p.m. And I got two military heroes, Vietnam veterans in studio with me tonight, Mike Southerland and Larry Johnson. We're talking about the Vietnam War and the long arm of the war, how it still impacts soldiers to this day, psychologically and mentally and emotionally and even physically, as Mike mentioned. And so we're talking about that. Larry, talk about getting help. I mean, say there's a vet listening tonight. Maybe he doesn't know about your group or he's not sure what to do, but he's like, man, I've been struggling in silence. What would you give advice to somebody, whether they're a Vietnam vet or a younger vet, maybe a Iraqi vet? What would you tell them?
You can call me, 979-307-8011, and I can give him some help, and I can also give him a counselor at the VA clinic here that we used to call our angel. We went with her 15 years until the VA decided we didn't need any counseling there anymore a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And right after they decided that, was when I lost my buddy Dennis. Yeah. But yeah, give me a call. I'll try to keep my phone on 24/7.
Give me that number again.
979-307-8011. Or Mike, call Mike.
Yeah, 979-229-7805. The VA's got a lot of assets,
right.
But like there's not enough mental health people.
Right.
So the group thing is really a big deal.
Talk about the group a little bit, Mike or Larry. Tell us what the group is and can anybody go to it, any veteran, and talk about when you meet and how people get involved in that and how it helps you.
When I first started getting help from the VA in 2001 or 2 or 3, I went to Waco, and the doctor up there told me to come to Miss Cannon. I went to her one-on-one, then I went to the group. And when the VA decided to do away with our group about early 19, we kept it going every other Thursday. We were going every Thursday at the clinic. And here just recently, and we're up to anywhere from between 6 and 12 people show up. About 2 months ago, I decided to keep it going every Thursday, because we had a couple of guys, including myself, that need it every Thursday, and Dr. Vance, the young man that's commentating this show here, he's been over talking to us quite a few times, and he's been really helpful, because we don't really have a counselor like Miss Cannon to come talk to us, so we just mainly bullcorn, talk about war stories, or talk about. Miss Cannon used to always start, well, we need to talk. You need to talk if you had a bad week, or if I need somebody to talk that had a good week.
Yeah.
But we need to hear some good news in this group.
Right.
So.
And you guys meet at the feed barn, right, Mary? Most of the time here in Bryan.
Fin Feather.
At noon every Thursday now.
Yeah.
Every Thursday.
And any veteran's welcome to attend, right?
Exactly. Yes. Any combat veteran needs help. It doesn't matter to be combat. It used to be combat, but it doesn't matter. Any veteran that needs help with what happened in the war or whatever happened in his life, come to our group, because like I tell the young veterans, keep coming to group whatever you do. Yeah,
and it's such a powerful thing, listeners, that they do. And remember, I told you guys, even though the VA stopped doing the quote, psychological group, if you will, professional counselor group, just meeting together as comrades does a lot. And then the Brazos Valley Coalition on Citizens Refuge, we come in there and help with some educational stuff and that sort of thing. But it's so powerful that y'all just meet, because if you isolate, if you don't have that connection and people understand, because nobody really understands but y'all, truly, what you've been through, I think that's such a great thing that you're doing for each other.
I went to a program in 08, I think it was, in Waco for 7 weeks. And there were about 30 guys there, mostly Vietnam veterans, a few Iraq veterans. And they were up there trying to get help, I thought, and they said, well, what percent are you? I said, I'm already 100% disabled from PTSD. And they said, well, what are you doing here? We're trying to show the VA that we need help. I said, they asked me, what are you doing here? You're already 100%. I'm trying to stay alive. Yeah. That's why I'm here. But so I was there 7 weeks, and it was a pretty good program. But not one counselor was a veteran, so I was kind of disappointed with that. Miss Cannon.
Yeah, they don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty. It was a pretty good program. I stayed 7 weeks, but it upset me because there wasn't one single one that was a veteran.
Yeah, you think somebody would be a veteran there?
I mean, they're trying. I guess they couldn't get any.
Yeah.
But most of them don't want to talk about it.
I think what's appealing is some of the guys are saying that they didn't have a place to go where they wouldn't be criticized. That they could feel like, they could say whatever they wanted to say, tell you whatever they want to tell you, and we understand. I mean, whatever it is, really, I mean, maybe not, but that's the way you feel about it, that it's a good feeling.
Safe place, and somebody will understand. Right. The thing about your group, I love that, and nobody has to talk, right, Larry? They don't have to come in there and tell what they don't want, not ready to talk about or want to talk about.
A lot of them just come there to listen.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. They just to feel the camaraderie and the brotherhood, and they open up when they want to open up, and they don't when they don't, right?
Yeah, some guys want to tell us the story.
We have several guys that come and don't say a word.
Yeah,
You know?
that's fine, right?
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever they want to say, whatever they want to do.
As long as they won't be there and don't cuss at us, that's all right.
Be there with us.
They'll call us names.
Be there with us. We got our own, what I call our own little squad of people there.
Yeah, we'll call the Brazos Valley Squad.
Yes, that's a new name. I guess we can call
But
them.
we listen, we don't make judgments.
Right.
Because it's not good. Our families do that. I guess we cause them so much trouble that they finally start to get to the point where the hell with you, you don't need to be here. And that's when the names start being called and the distancing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and the family members, there's they need to be educated on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They need to understand that you can be, quote, appear to be fine for 30 years, and then the anger, the startle reflex, the agitation, all those things, depression, hypervigilance, all those things can come into play. And that causes some stress if they don't understand, like Larry said, go together as a husband and wife and family and get help together. Because that can educate them too, what you're dealing with. They think it's just like you said, an excuse or something. Well, it's not an excuse. You've got memories that are traumatic.
Yeah, I'd give anything if I'd made it where myself and my wife could have started going when I went on my own. Both of us could have went all them years. And I may not have the problem I had today. But just, when they put up with you so long, sometimes it don't work out for the best. Even though it was mostly maybe the veterans' fault in a lot of ways.
Well, but and that's what people understand what you're dealing with. Those traumatic memories can cause people to act angry and things when they normally wouldn't. It's not like they're trying to be mean or hateful. Your fuse, your cup is full. Little things can set you off at some point in time that may not do other people because you're so built up in your mind with you can't take much more. And people understand that. So
I talked to veterans and say we don't want to talk about it. I said, well, you don't have to talk about it, but I found with this veteran, after 45 years of not saying nothing, it helped me to talk about it. I have to talk about it.
Yeah, it's so important that you do that, and then you talk with a group of people that are non-judgmental, like Mike said, that care, that can understand and relate because they've all kind of been there. And it's a powerful group you guys have, a great bunch of men that really, and these are successful guys, listeners. These are guys that gave back to this community and have worked hard and raised their families here. And they're helping each other basically because that long arm hasn't gone away. Even though it's been since 71 or 70 or 69 when you guys were there. That's how powerful PTSD is. That's how powerful war can be. It still impacts people many years later. Many. In various ways.
50 or more.
50 or more.
It's crazy it can last that long before it affects. But I think it all results to not being busy, not thinking about it for all those years when you're younger. And once you get our age, and automatically you're not busy 16 or 18 hours a day, this is when it hits you.
Right. It hits you hard. Listeners, if you know a vet, maybe you're a vet tonight or you know a vet, tell them about the group. If they don't remember Larry or Mike's numbers, it's at the feed barn every Thursday at noon. Just show up and ask them where it's in the meeting room they meet at. You can always email the Brazos Valley Coalition of Suicide Prevention at bdcost@gmail.com. I can get you the information also. The main thing is just show up, be there.
Exactly.
They're a welcoming group. They're not going to feel ostracized or feel like they're an outsider. They're going to welcome right into the group. In fact, last time I was there, you had a couple of new guys that were there.
It's expanded some,
We had 2 new guys join just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
One from Bryan and one from Navajo, both Army.
Yep, very
One
exciting.
of them got wounded, and
about a month after he was there, what, a month or 2 months?
he wasn't there very long.
He wasn't there very long.
Yeah.
Shot in the chest.
And then the key, like you listeners, that they said, you don't have to be a Vietnam vet, any veteran. And that's men or women, right? Even women. Anybody can come there who's been a veteran.
Actually, anybody that needs help, I think, because there's a lot of people that are suffering from PTSD that hasn't never been a veteran. And we can understand the position they're in because we're dealing with it.
You understand. You live with PTSD. You understand the problems that PTSD causes, regardless of what it came from. You guys, it was war. It could have been horrific child abuse somebody went through.
Yeah.
As you know, at the Suicide Coalition, we work with a lot of first responders, law enforcement that see, kids ejected in car wrecks all the time and stuff. That also can build up and cause the same sort of deal. So PTSD is an equal opportunity killer. And it is a killer. Make no mistake about it. Larry gave us the numbers, 20 to 22 a day. are dying.
55 and older, and that's a shame to lose their life after they've been around that long.
Yeah,
You know?
they've lived and raised their families, but like Mike said, it's on the back burner sometimes. It comes out in weird ways, like Larry was saying, some crazy ways sometimes, but it's always there and it can get help, but you have to talk about it, like Larry said, right? You have to talk about it. You have to reach out and get help. You can't isolate. Worst thing you can do is isolate, right?
Yeah. It really does weird, not the bad weird things, but like, I don't wear any rings. Never, since Vietnam, I hadn't worn rings because when you're on a helicopter and you jump down, if the ring hangs on one of those rivets, it'll jerk your finger off.
Oh, wow.
My father-in-law lost both fingers like that.
And I didn't.
Both ring
And
fingers.
another thing that dawns on me once in a while is I don't use any aftershave lotion. Because when you go down in the jungle, when you're shot down, the Viet Cong could smell you. So my mother sent me all kinds of no soap that didn't have any kind of odor in it, and I used that for years, and so I still don't use that aftershave.
Well, we got military insect repellent, but like I say, on ambush at night you can't use it either because it had a smell to it too. You know, so we carried it, but very seldom got to use it.
Well,
It's amazing.
amazing the little things and the big things. We're about out of time, guys. I want to thank y'all for coming down today and sharing this again. This is part 2. We talked about a month or so ago on the first part of it. Just fascinating, important information people need to hear. And just the last word, Larry, and I'll give Mike the last word. If you could, what do you want to leave listeners with tonight that they need to know about what you guys are dealing with, and just anything you want to say?
Well, just you got our phone numbers, and just remember, if you know a vet out there that you think needs some help, don't wait too long. Talk to them into getting some help, and whether it's with our group or with a VA clinic. Miss Teresa Kennan is a wonderful counselor up there. We used to call her our angel. She saved my life, I think, many years. And just keep that in mind, and we appreciate you, Doc, for having us here. Letting us talk about veterans and suicide because, you know, to me, 20 a day is just unacceptable.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Very unacceptable to me.
Horrible. Mike?
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming to our meetings and talking to us, and it's kind of soothing. I don't know why for me, but it is. It's kind of stabilizing, and I think Larry talked about the veterans, but you know what's happening to us now? Kids are being bullied in school.
Mm-hmm.
That's a form of PTSD in the long run, and I think more people need to be involved in watching those kids that get marginalized and they don't talk to them and they call them names and that kind of stuff, because that results in some horrendous actions.
Suicide also, yeah.
And suicides and attacking other people too, so watch out.
Important topic, listeners. I will mention this, the Brazos Valley Coast and Suicide Prevention, we have our annual conference. It'll be virtual this year, so it's just on the computer only. The first Thursday in November, there'll be more information we'll send out. But the reason I mention it, and anybody should attend this, I've got a speaker from the VA, Veterans Commission in Austin, that's going to talk about veterans issues and family members, how they can be more in tune to what the veterans need. So it'll be an 1.5-hour track. There are other speakers and other topics dealing with suicide prevention. We'll have just one just for veterans too. I'll let you guys know more information next week or so when we get the flyers out. But anyway, thank you guys for coming down. An incredible show, incredible information. Thank you for your service to this country and all that you've dealt with along the years. And thanks for sharing that. You know, you could have kept all this to yourself. But by going out and talking to people on the radio and holding your groups, inviting Larry and Mike, you know, inviting people to come to the group, you're saving lives. You don't know how many people it's been saved just because of what you've dealt with. Anyway, God bless y'all. Listeners, be safe. Gigi Lance is up next with great dance and disco tunes. We'll talk to you next week on another installment of A Family Affair.